Nigerian Air Force unveils new base in Plateau State. Inflation rate in Nigeria on the decline. Coalition of civil society calls for review of NGOs' reports on counterinsurgency. And in sports, NFF allays fears of Ebola scare ahead of Super Eagles' friendly match with DR Congo. These and more reports in a moment. I am Nten Ekbang with the AM News on Television Nigerian. The Nigerian Air Force NAV has unveiled its new base in Kerang, Plateau State, with the commissioning of newly constructed office and residential accommodations for the 205 Combat Search and Rescue Group. The commissioned projects were in fulfillment of the promise made by the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, during the groundbreaking ceremony of the new unit on 7th of March 2017 to ensure timely and adequate provision of infrastructural facilities for the smooth commencement of operation by the unit. The newly commissioned projects include the group headquarters complex, a 10-by-1 bedroom accommodation for non-commissioned officers, and a 6-by-1 bedroom single officers' quarters, among others. A recent report from the National Bureau of Statistics indicates that for the 15th consecutive month since January 2017, inflation rate recorded a decline in April from 13.34% in March 2018 to 12.48% year-on-year. As contained in the latest figures, the Consumer Price Index, which measures inflation, stood at 12.48% year-on-year in April 2018, indicating a 0.86% point drop in 13.34% recorded in March 2018. Also, on a month-on-month basis, the headline index increased by 0.83% in April 2018, up by 0.01% average point from the rate recorded in March. The Coalition of Civil Society Organizations on Human Rights and Conflict Resolution in Nigeria has called for detailed review of reports of NGOs on counterinsurgency in Nigeria to ensure that such reports are not meant to service the interest of third parties to the detriment of Nigerians. This was one of the recommendations of the 2018 first quarterly monitoring report on the war against terrorism in Nigeria, presented by the coalition in Abuja. TVN correspondent Nten Ekbang was there and our reports. The quarterly report is to, among other things, ascertain the level of adherence of the military to the rules of engagement, enforcement of fundamental human rights of citizens, as well as compliance to international best practices. On the flip side, the report also monitored the activities of international NGOs to ensure that their activities conform to the principles and purposes of the United Nations. Findings, according to the report presented by Executive Director, Coalition of Civil Society Organizations on Human Rights and Conflict Resolution in Nigeria, Mr. Gowon Maxwell, revealed that the Nigerian military sustained its operations against Boko Haram in the affected areas and reduced the existence of the terrorist group to restricted areas, mostly outside the borders of Nigeria.
The NGO's position is capable of scandalizing the military to a point where the only option left is to withdraw troops from areas where they are operating, which will create an environment that will be conducive for a Boko Haram comeback to terrorize people in these places. Investigation shows that Boko Haram has been degraded to a point that it can no longer engage in any impactful, which has now left it to be reliant on the activities of NGOs on the PSEA platform to release reports that terrorize the people in the Northeast in line with their agenda, which is at variance from that they present themselves to be. Okay. Good afternoon, all. Gentlemen of the press, you're all welcome for this quarterly presentation of the report conducted by the civil society organizations, Coalition of Civil Society Organizations, on the operations of the Nigerian military in the Northeast against the insurgents Boko Haram. So let me read the report on behalf of the members of the coalition. and we go thus. Operations by the Nigerian military against Boko Haram terrorists in the northeast of the country, Borno, Adamawa, Taraba, Yobe, Bauchi, and Gombe states, have largely been reviewed as either a continuum or spot assessment. These approaches tend to yield distorted analysis since their tendencies to either trivialize the significance of events or to over-amplify them to the point of causing undue alarm to people who live in these areas. It also tends to distort the overall security outlook of the country, something that spirals to attract other security incidents. The Coalition of CSOs on Human Rights and Conflict Resolution in Nigeria undertakes review of the ongoing war on terrorism to ascertain maximum adherence of the military to the rules of engagement by the Nigerian military, man's dignity and respect for person, and to ensure that the activities of the non-state actors are in conformity with the general principles and purposes of the United Nations and other conventions' rights. The review period is based on the first quarter of 2018, which allows for time frame to be optimum, not too long and not too brief. The review monitored troops closely in their operations to appraise their conduct, observance of rules of engagement, and compliance with best international standards to ensure that human rights remains sacrosanct. Layered on this, the review also monitored the activities of international NGOs to ensure that their activities conform to the principles and purposes of the United Nations. Methodology. Field staff and researchers from the coalition made up of seasoned academics and authorities with wealth of experience in internal armed conflict mitigation concluded on the spot visitations to theater of troops operations, IDP camps, and affected areas when it is safe to do so. In such instances, they interviewed survivors and eyewitnesses. The team also reviewed media reporting for contents about military operations and available internal and public documents of organizations and agencies that work in the affected areas. Findings. The review found that the Nigerian military sustained its operation against Boko Haram terrorists in the affected areas, reducing the existence of the terrorist groups to restricted areas mostly outside the border of Nigeria. The operations continue to attract the interest of international non-governmental organizations that make assessment based on their preconceived templates. Such reports dwell on the desperate attempts by terrorists to use improvised explosive devices or suicide bombers to sustain their scare tactics and continue to spread terror in the minds of the people. This even as top commanders of the terrorist group have continued to turn themselves into the Nigerian military. These NGOs, which were once accused of using underhand tactics for blackmailing the military, have moved from accusing troops of human rights abuse and violation of rules of engagement to expand their accusation to sexual exploitation and abuse at vulnerable IDPs in the course of their work. Their affiliates also faulted reports that the Nigerian army freed 1,000 captives in the 3-month period. Detailed follow-up on these allegations revealed there is collusion between the NGOs and some external interests that are committed to undermining the Nigerian military as to pave way for the unfortunate humanitarian crisis to prevail against reasoning in some parts of the Northeast. Expert conclusion. The report of these NGOs have the potential to present Nigeria as a country with a military that has no good reputation, which will in turn make the country ineligible for international support. The formation of protection from sexual exploitation and abuse Nigeria by some of these NGOs amounts to direct interference by foreign entities in the internal affairs of Nigeria, which runs contrary to the spirit of the United Nations. From our investigations, this is a covert operation aimed at blackmailing the Nigerian military, which has remained the only tool used by the Nigerian state to enforce the rights of civilians to life and inhuman and degrading treatment from the terrorists.
It also reported that international NGOs that were once accused of using underhand tactics for blackmailing the military have sustained such ingenious act, noting that if not addressed, such reports are capable of presenting the military as one without reputation and not deserving of international support. The report therefore recommended, among other things, civilian participation in internal security, continuation of civil policing where the military have wound down operations, as well as engagement between the federal government and international bodies to prevail on the staffers of such international bodies to avoid comments that could bolster Boko Haram to regroup.
There is an urgent need for organizations indicted in this report to be warned to desist from executing agendas that do not conform to the principles and purposes of the United Nations. This coalition is therefore drawing the attention of the United Nations, the federal government of Nigeria, and the Nigerian military to the evil agenda of the new setup under PSEA, a document detailing the names, designations, and organizations involved in this latest plot is attached for the immediate action of the concerned persons.
For Television Nigeria News, Nten Ekpang reporting. Still ahead, medical doctors sabotage health workers strike, plus more on sports and the foreign scene. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm Prince David Adetunji Adeyeye, known as DAA. I am a lawyer and an energy specialist. I live and work here in FCT, Abuja. I am running for the House of Representatives for Amak Buhari Federal Constituency for the good people of FCT under the platform of Young Progressive Party. I am running because I believe in legislative agenda for community development. I wanted a community that is responsive, that is supporting and creating social infrastructure and amenities for our children and young people to be able to compete globally. I am encouraging all that is out there to go there and get a PVC and ensure that you vote. Election does matter, and this election, it's important that we elect people that are good, that are going to represent you. Support me as the House of Representative candidate for Young Progressive Party for Amak Buhari Federal Constituency. Thank you for your support.
Young Progressive Party. Service to the people. Welcome back. The lingering nationwide strike embarked upon by the health workers may have suffered a setback following resolve by doctors to render services and kick against the demands of the health workers. The Nigerian Medical Association (NMA) had, in a statement, threatened to withdraw their services across health institutions in the country if the federal government acceded to the demands of Johesu and other health workers, and had reportedly continued rendering services in hospitals and healthcare institutions where the health workers are currently on strike. The national chairman of Johesu, Mr. Biobebe Lemoye Josiah, accused the Ministry of Health of collaborating with the doctors in suppressing Johesu's legitimate demands from the government, while the strike by the union has so far crippled healthcare delivery in public health institutions across the country. In sports, the Nigerian Football Federation's first Vice President Seyi Akinwumi has assured that Nigeria's friendly match against the DR Congo is not under threat in spite of the Ebola outbreak in the country. Speaking in Lagos, Akinwumi revealed that necessary precautionary measures had been put in place to forestall transmission of the deadly disease into Nigeria. The Eagles' friendly match against the Diablos Rogues Red Devils of Congo had been a speculation for cancellation due to the deadly Ebola disease outbreak in the country, as the Super Eagles are expected to play DR Congo on May 28 in Port Harcourt before the warm-up game against the Three Lions of England on June 3 at Wembley Stadium. On the foreign scene, a Stop Abortion campaign being run by a Spanish-based group has provoked widespread anger and led to appeals in several parts of the Italian city of Rome. The poster with the inscription, "Abortion is the prime cause of femicide in the world," appeared in black and white in several areas of the city and one feminist group has condemned the posters as disgraceful, while others objected to the use of a word often used for the killing of women by men. The Madrid-based Citizengo group behind the posters timed the campaign to coincide with the 22nd May anniversary of Italy's Law 194, as Italy is about to mark 40 years since abortion was made legal. And that's AM News. But just before we go, another look at the headlines again. Nigerian Air Force unveils new base in Plateau State. Inflation rate in Nigeria on the decline. Coalition of civil societies calls for a review of NGO support on counterinsurgency. And we also told you that the Nigerian Football Federation has allayed fears of Ebola scare ahead of Super Eagles' friendly match with DR Congo. Do remember, sincerity is impassable unless it pervades the whole being. I am Nten Ekpang. To have a lovely day.